Hello and welcome to Communicate with Power. I'm Barry McLaughlin,
I'm Laura Peck.
and we are the two principals of a company called TLC Transformational Leadership Consultants. We're not really talking about our company, we're really about some of the issues out there that cross the world from politics to public policy to media. And the blend of those three, the nexus, if you like, is really where we give a lot of attention, certainly on this podcast. I don't know what number this is. It's got to be 9 or 10 by now, but we thank you for subscribing. We want to encourage you to share this with your friends. We hope to see more of you. Uh, so, looking at the world right now, we'll zoom right into Canada and say, okay, what's really happening politically in Canada? And of course, we just had a major budget. Uh, Prime Minister Mark Carney came down with a very major budget, 73 billion in deficit. Tremendous focus on the investments in major projects, and that really began to trigger a lot of action. But the major thing, really, in terms of the political players, has been Pierre Poilievre. He was making news when you'd kind of think he'd want to turn the spotlight more on Prime Minister Mark Carney. Instead, the spotlight was on him. Why? Because two members of his caucus, one is retiring, one is resigning, who chose to resign right in the middle of what's going on here on Parliament Hill, where Chris D'Entremont, a member of the caucus from Nova Scotia, crossed the floor to join the Liberals. So he kind of added the second Mr. Generous, whatever his name was. He basically, helped stir the pot on this. So now we have two members that won't be voting for the Conservatives when it comes to the major budget vote this coming week. So this is the situation we're in, and there is Mark Carney. He's out there holding a news conference finally, in which he responded to these comments and questions about the fact that it looks like there's a lot of fooling around. I forget the exact word that was used to describe the kind of attitude within his own executive team, with his own party leadership. So it's kind of got all very controversial, very negative, and he fired back really by attacking the media. So first of all, do we ever say it's great to attack the media? Is that a good strategy politically?
Never. No, it doesn't pay anybody to do that unless you want to look like the administration that we see in the United States, in which it's constantly attacking the media. But this is Canada, and people prefer that they don't like harsh talk.
But a lot of Canadians don't trust the media. I'm talking about mainstream media, the MSM, mainstream media. It's really become less and less trusted, and that's been part of the misinformation, disinformation, and some of it earned. By the way, to be fair, they're not perfect. They have made mistakes. They do have built-in biases on various things over the years. Not all. That's a terrible thing to say about any organization or any kind of profession. But they have lost a lot of standing. It takes years to earn trust, and it can take one negative story to lose it all. So there was Pierre Poilievre at a news conference in which he was really criticizing the CBC in particular for its coverage of the floor walking and Mr. D'Entremont and things that he had to say. So it looked so negative to him that he decided to do what he does very effectively, is lashing out at the media. So I agree with you, Laura. I think attacking the media is getting. It sort of sounds like you're on the defense and you're losing. You know, so I think it's an important point to make. But I think secondly here, there's a core element going on in the Conservative Party, and that is that it really is it came together after the Canadian Alliance and the PC Party merged, and so you had Preston Manning and you had Peter MacKay. These two major factions, different parties, really came together in a merger. And when a race was on for leadership, Stephen Harper won, and Stephen Harper won 3 elections under the Conservative banner. But during that time, they seem to have lost connection to that PC party. And so you see Pierre Poilievre, even he's having arguments with Doug Ford, the PC premier of Ontario, and Tim Houston, the PC premier of Nova Scotia. He's having problems with them. And so when you combine that with Mr. D'Entremont being a PC member, previously he was in the provincial party. Now you got this whole thing of, has he cut loose the red Tory, the PC party, the kind of more centrist type of member, and now he seems to be just favoring the right side of the spectrum. So that's called positioning. And Laura, positioning is a pretty big word that we use in terms of our clients, and maybe you want to open up the discussion on positioning.
Well, this week we have been positioning clients, but this has nothing to do with political parties. It has everything to do with a very large organization. So we have done this for public sector companies as well as not for profit companies, agencies, whatever. So when you're helping people position, they're already experts. So you're just guiding them through how do we want to position this so that if we, woke you up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'd know exactly what you're in the business of. Or if you're in a panel discussion or any kind of way that you are publicly communicating, you've got the right verbiage that lands the right way in people's psyche and their brain so that they remember what you're in the business of. So this is exactly what we do.
Yeah, so we spent a half-day seminar with the CEO of this organization. We did talk about, there's so much information there, so much detail crammed in that you don't have any clear takeaway of who are they, what are they really in the business of, what value added do they bring to a pretty crowded field, to the customer, the consumer, to the client. And when it's really murky and unclear, they will just continue talking, but we really don't know, as the expression goes, who are you for? Who are you for? So we have worked with political leaders in it, but this is a good example, I think, what Laura's talking about, we did this week, of nothing to do with politics, but everything to do with every organization needs a clear positioning. It's got to be simple. It's got to be understandable. What's the takeaway people have as to who your organization is? Why should I care about it? And how you, what are the values guiding you in your mission? So that's certainly been we don't mind saying the client was very, very happy with that. And we really enjoyed working with this CEO. And we hope to be doing more of it. We've done that previously in the past. We don't really promote it very much, but positioning is an extremely important part of communications for an organization. All right, well, let's turn to another topic. And Laura, what was on your mind for?
Well, I
this?
found it very interesting to watch the Kelsey brothers, Jason and Travis Kelsey, because earlier on, Jason had made a comment on their podcast about who cares about baseball and who cares it's more up in Canada. And he did
And who
get
cares
some...
about the Blue Jays? He really hit the Blue Jays.
And because they're very entertaining, those guys, and I'm such a student of communications, I enjoy watching them and new trends and how they pivoted over. Anyway, he sort of made an apology today. It was a sorry not sorry, but
Yeah.
he was quite funny about the whole
Yeah,
thing.
he really
I'm looking for my flag here.
he was more joking around, but
Yeah.
I think when something's at stake of significance, like for example Wayne Gretzky, last year, earlier this year, he got hit hard for videos showing him celebrating Christmas with the Trumps, hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, golfing with Donald Trump.
But he says he's not political at all.
No, fair enough. He's not political, and nor has anybody claimed he was. The problem is who he's associating with. And of course, the fact that his son in law, Dustin Johnson, is a world class golfer. We know that Trump loves golfers. And so he's ended up in a situation where he tried to talk his way out of it without apologizing. He just said, we have some common interests, friendly, but he tried to kind of push back without, contradicting himself.
And you've written apologies for people because, as I say, very often we're dealing with experts. They come in and they want to have an effective way to diplomatically say they are sorry about something. So
I think that situation, it needed to be carefully written. He kind of said, I'm Canadian and a Canadian citizen. He went on another interview to say that he was not an American citizen. Well, they've kind of discovered he actually is both. He's got his American citizenship as well as his Canadian citizenship, according to the information we're seeing. Let's let him. He'll probably have to answer for that one.
He's married to an American,
Sure.
but he says he's Canadian through and
No,
through.
but the whole issue of citizenship became an important issue. So if he has contradicted, he needs to clean that up. So to your point, Laura, about apologies, I mean, I think I have been asked to write apologies, and an apology is a combination of speaking from your heart, for sure, authentically, and to be genuinely sorry for a mistake you have made. The problem with a lot of people, they're not really all that sorry. They think they were misquoted, or they were, you know, taken advantage of, or that they were not properly, the story wasn't accurate, whatever. So they never really get to that core element of, I am truly sorry for what I did, and here's what I'm doing as a result of that. It has to be genuine. And yes, it is true that we happen to have written it for heads of agencies and other organizations, because they get way too bureaucratic in it. You know, 5 different levels are going to put their
Or the lawyers get
or the
in.
lawyer. Oh my God, don't even get me started on lawyers. So the lawyers then are trying to craft it. Good luck on that one. So
We love
oh no,
lawyers. We
but
want to follow
they're,
the
they're
law.
not going to be able to do that. So I think writing that apology from the heart, of course, to me, every word of what I've written for them has to be signed off on, agreed to fulsomely by the individual. So that's an important part of that. And so I think the word authentic is the most important word in all of that. If it's not authentic, don't bother
And we're
pretending.
all friends. They all high five one another in that they feel that they've arrived at the right message and the right way of wordsmithing the apology.
Well, I would never want to push. That's a good point. I'd never want to push an apology on
Never.
anybody. Here's what you need to say. No, I think they have to realize that they got to come to the conclusion that unless you apologize, people make mistakes. Admitting them as a whole, I hate to go on about Donald Trump, but when has he ever admitted to doing anything wrong? Yes, he's blatantly misled the American public about his relationship with Epstein, and so you're going to end up with more and more. And here's the problem: then every revelation, 1,500 times, I believe his name has come up now in the papers released so far. So that's like, oh, it seems to me that quote friendship went on a lot longer than you were leading us to believe. So it has to be truthful and has to be profoundly authentic. So he's never done that. I don't recall on anything, to be honest. I think it's part of his brand is he never apologized, right? He learned that from Roy Cohn way back, and so he's not going to apologize. However, I think it hurts you in the long run.
That's a really old way. Let's move along. This is CFL Grey Cup
Yep.
weekend. And I did have somebody that watches us and subscribes to our
Which
podcast,
we love.
which we love, and we thank her for her comments. But sometimes people don't like football or sports metaphors. However, I gotta say that I do get swept up, when the Blue Jays are playing or
Yeah.
hockey or whatever. But this weekend, the Grey Cup is on, and so that's fun. And I can't say that I know all the players, or I don't know the plays or
Well,
whatever.
it's
But I like
Montreal
the fun of
Alouettes
it.
versus Saskatchewan Roughriders,
Yeah,
and I have forgiven the Roughriders for holding on to that name. While Ottawa, we lost the
yeah.
rights to the Ottawa Roughriders, and so we're basically the Ottawa Red Blacks, still loyal to them. But when it comes down to, is it going to be, who are we cheering for here, Montreal, or are we cheering for Saskatchewan? Well, the Eastern Conference is, of course, Montreal is in the Eastern Conference, so are the Ottawa Red Blacks. So I watched them with my son Brendan in person. The Alouettes, basically they have they're a very good team, but so is Saskatchewan. So I was a kid that grew up on the border of Alberta and Saskatchewan. So certainly as a young kid, I loved the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So you know what? I'm going to be, to use an old John F. Kennedy line, I'm going to be cheering for Montreal, but praying for Saskatchewan. Okay, I think that's it for our podcast this week. All right, and we want to thank our dog Teddy for being very quiet throughout this entire podcast, and we thank you for that, Teddy. So we'll see you next time here on Communicate with Power.